Hello, good morning, and welcome to my channel, and welcome to Devon in the southwest of England. Today I'm out for a little walk around a nature reserve in a place called Dawlish Warren, and I thought I'd bring you along with me to have a little bit of a chat about, well, mainly about living abroad. And it follows on from a video I made recently that attracted a lot of comments and caused me to reflect on some of the things that people had shared with me, plus my own experiences. So I'll talk about that in a little while. But first of all, if you're new to my channel, then a little bit of background about myself. So I am British. I have just returned to live in the UK after 15 years of living in Germany. I've been back here for 5 months, and I'm living in a part of England that is far from anywhere I've ever lived before. So maybe you can tell a little bit from, it's all right, I'm not sure where I'm going here. Maybe you can tell a little bit from my accent that I am from the West Midlands originally. So that's a couple of hours north of where we are now. And what I did, I started a YouTube channel about 8 or 9 months ago to capture my last few months of living in Germany and living in continental Europe, and to also capture those significant moments in my life, such as when I gave up my work, when I left behind Bonn after living there for so long, and as we tried to establish a new life for ourselves down here in Devon. And I've been publishing maybe one video per week during that period. I'm quite surprised I've kept it going for this long. And in parallel to all of those big life changes that I've just mentioned, I also discovered that I had cancer. And so my YouTube videos have followed me on that journey of being diagnosed with cancer, having the operation, and what followed that. So it's a real sort of vlog, a term I've had to get used to, something that was new to me. It's often just about my everyday life, my thoughts and reflections. And normally my videos get a few hundred views if I'm lucky. But this last one, that was called, if I remember correctly, Thinking of Leaving England, here's what I learned about living abroad. This video, with a long name, attracted, I think, more than 20,000 views so far, and lots of comments. And I was quite blown away by all of this. I wasn't expecting it, and I was very thankful and grateful for all of the engagement with that video. And so I thought I would follow up on that by sharing some more reflections on it, because as much as I tried to read all the comments and respond to them, I found it a huge challenge. It was quite difficult to find the time to do that, especially over Easter. That's a sort of a busy time anyway. But yeah, maybe first of all I'll start by talking about those comments. So the comments fell into 3 categories, I would say. The first were the ones that I just had to remove because they were offensive either to other people or to myself, and that's something I've got to get used to when I put myself out there in the internet world. So I got rid of those, and then after sorting the wheat from the chaff, I was left with comments that were either helpful, interesting, or even inspirational. And the second category, just very quickly before we go on to the topic of moving abroad, was constructive. Most of it was constructive feedback about my video production. So what I did was I had some music on the video and quite a few people told me that the music was too loud and they couldn't hear what I was saying. You know, you learn from your mistakes. I was a bit disappointed, particularly because of how many people saw the video, but it's all part of the learning process that I'm going through. Hold on a moment. It seems the pathway here is closed, so I need to go down to the beach behind me, walk all around the end there, and then I'll try and get back onto the nature reserve further on and walk back across that behind me. Before I start talking, I will just try and get down this quite steep sandy bank. So I'll turn this around so you can see what I'm doing. Right, oh, this is lovely. Brings back many childhood memories, this does. Oh, lovely. Beautiful soft sand as I just slide my way down. Okay, now this looks much quieter down here now. Let's turn it around. Oops, fell down a hole, sorry about that. Okay, so I was saying that the comments were from all over the world. I mean, that's something incredible, isn't it, about the internet, is that you can upload some content like a video, and within hours you've got comments from people as far afield as New Zealand, Australia, Canada, the USA, all over Europe. So whole load of comments, but the one was from someone from New Zealand who said he or she originated from Exmouth, which is the town on the other side of the estuary there. So in a bit you'll get a better view of that, and maybe if that person's watching then they can reminisce a little bit about their hometown. Yeah, so what struck me about all these comments was the sheer range of different experiences that people have had, which I guess you would expect anyway, wouldn't you? But it was interesting to read, because there were people who were either thinking of moving abroad but haven't yet decided. There were people who have moved abroad and think it's the best thing they ever did. People who have moved abroad but think it's maybe one of the worst things they ever did. And obviously there were people in between those two extremes. And then there were people who moved abroad and decided to come back to the United Kingdom or come back to their home country. And then for those who came back, there were various different views on that, because when you come back, the country often isn't the same as how you remember it. So yeah, real range of thoughts on this, and it was interesting to read, and I could relate to many of them. And as I was reading through them, I had this strange feeling that maybe I were part of a community of people who have done this extraordinary thing in our lives, which is to move away from everything that is special to us, you know, our hometown, or our home country, our family and friends. And we've done that in search of something special, you know, to either improve ourselves, to become better people, for better opportunities, in order to maybe provide for our family if we come from a country where it's, you know, going through tough times. So for all sorts of reasons people have moved abroad, and I found it fascinating to read through those stories. And some of them were stories. I mean, obviously you get the short comments, but there were some that were quite long paragraphs that they wrote describing what they'd been through. And I felt there was something running through that, some themes that do connect us, and that even though sometimes we can feel alone and isolated, when we move to another country. Actually, we have something in common with many other people, and it really is many other people who have at some point in their lives emigrated. So I got some comfort from that, and it reminded me of some of the things that I'd been through during my life and that I talked about during the last video. But perhaps if I was to pick one word that makes all of these people extraordinary, and that is sacrifice. So they've all made a huge sacrifice in order to pursue something better in life. And so what I'll do is I'll talk about a couple of the sacrifices I made, just in the hope that it helps others to feel less alone or comforted by the fact that they're not the only ones who have struggled with this. So when I lived in Germany, I mentioned in the last video that there were kind of 3 phases to this experience. The first phase was when my family and I all lived together in Germany. Then the second phase was when I lived alone in Germany and my family lived back in England. And then the third phase was when my wife and one of my children joined me back in Germany. And during this middle phase, when I was on my own over there, I used to drive back to England as often as I could. It was perhaps once every 2 months, and I was lucky enough to be able to get to have a week at a time back here. And I would travel on the ferry, and I would travel late at night so that I could maximise the amount of time that I could spend with my family. So I'd finish work perhaps on a Friday afternoon and drive straight up to either Dunkirk or Calais and get on that ferry and get to England as soon as I could. And then similarly, I'd stay with my family until the Sunday night the following week and then drive back as late as I could, so that I could make the most of the time available with my family. And I used to sit on that ferry. It was often fairly quiet because it wasn't during the peak travel times. But I'd look around me and maybe do a little bit of people watching, because it was a 2.5 hour crossing and there wasn't much else for me to do during that time. And I'd look at perhaps a retired British couple on their way back to a farmhouse in France, or a Polish tradesman or a Polish systems engineer with his UK registered car on his way back to Poland. And I'd see these cars going all the way out to Berlin and beyond on that long journey to Poland. Or I'd see a Romanian registered minibus with a trailer, and the minibus was filled perhaps with family members or friends, and the trailer was full of all sorts of stuff, I don't know what, and they were making an extraordinary long journey. I mean, I've never driven to Romania, I've driven to Hungary, and I know that is a very long drive. And I used to look at these people and think, I'm one of them. I'm an immigrant. I am living in another country, trying to make the most out of the opportunities in life, trying to provide a service for my host nation, trying to provide a service to my family. And yeah, I felt very proud to be one of them, and I felt connected because we shared something in common. We were on a similar journey, even though our more detailed experiences were very different. We were still on a journey to improve our lives. And gosh, this place is really not easy to walk on. I need to change my route a little bit. Not sure whether you can see the terrain that I'm trying to navigate here, and I'm not concentrating much because I'm talking to you, so sorry about that. Yeah, so I used to enjoy these ferry crossings, and of course, as well as watching other people living out their amazing lives, I was also feeling quite nostalgic because we'd made so many crossings in the past on family holidays or out to visit my mum when she lived there, or school trips out there. So there was all sorts of memories as well of these ferry crossings. And so in a way I always found it quite an enjoyable and even perhaps emotional crossing. And I often thought, as I looked at these other people from these other countries making the same crossing as me, that behind all the stereotype images that we have of people from certain nations, there are real people just like me, just like you, just like us, with real stories to tell of endurance and resilience and sacrifice. And sorry, I am really struggling a bit with this walk. Don't know whether I've been a bit ambitious in terms of my recovery from this operation. Maybe I should have picked an easier route to try and explain all of this to you. Okay, so a couple of little stories then about sacrifice. So the first is about my mum. So my mum was visiting us in Bonn in Germany, and her phone rang, and it was her hospital consultant, and he started talking to her, and I was stood near her, and part way through the conversation she broke down in tears and gave the phone to me. So I took the phone and began a conversation with her doctor, and he told me that her cancer had spread extensively throughout her body, and that there was nothing they could do for her, and that she probably only had months to live. At least that's what I remember of the conversation. It's sometimes a little bit difficult to remember it precisely because I had clearly gone into a bit of a state of shock once I had heard the first few words or sentences. So anyway, I thanked him for the information. I ended the call, gave the phone back to my mum, and we started some conversations about what to do next. So, a few days after that phone call, she went home to England. I stayed behind in Germany because that was where I lived and where I worked. And within about 3 to 4 months, she had passed away. And during that period, I had only got to see her maybe twice at the most. Thankfully, I was with her at the very end when she died, and I was very grateful for that. But it did bring it home to me just how challenging life abroad can be when you're unable to spend much time with your dying mother, basically. Sorry, that sounds a bit blunt, but that was the situation. Now, my mum was proud of me for living in Germany. She liked to visit us, and so there were no bad feelings about this, and I accepted the situation as it was, so I didn't feel guilty in any way. But as I say, it was a reminder that our chosen lifestyle was not an easy one. And so, yeah, that's just my first example, the first thing that came to my mind when I thought about the sacrifices we make in pursuit of a better life. Isn't that just extraordinary? And I wonder how many of these birds migrate to other countries in pursuit of a better life. Okay, I'm now going to talk to you about another sacrifice we made in order to live abroad. And this one, you might judge me, you might think I made a huge mistake. And I do ask myself that question sometimes, but as I explain it to you, I will try and reassure myself that it wasn't a mistake and that we simply took a risk that led to the situation we're in now. When we first left the UK, we decided to sell our UK home. We didn't have much money, we didn't have many savings. We were very privileged. I guess we're from a privileged generation in that we were homeowners. But I, in particular, felt that we might need the money to establish a new life in Germany because we had no idea what we were in for. But instinctively I knew we were going to have to throw money at this new project of ours. So we decided to sell the house and we put the money into a savings account, and over the following years, slowly but surely, we started to eat into those savings. And the speed at which we were using up those savings increased when our two children both hit serious problems with the German education system. So first, my eldest daughter reached a point where she could no longer handle being in a German school. So we put her into a private international school in Bonn where they spoke English. And that was a great school, but it was very expensive. And then when our younger daughter hit the same sort of problems, we couldn't afford to put her in the same school. So what we did was after lots of discussions, we sent her back to England where she could go to an English school, and she stayed with relatives for a few months whilst my wife and I downsized, sold all our possessions, or as many as we could, moved me into a little flat in Bonn, and we rented a little house in England where my youngest daughter and my wife lived, and at the same time my eldest daughter went to university in England. So we kind of all went our separate ways. It was like an awful version of empty nest syndrome for me, left behind in Germany with nothing but my little kind of bedsit and my cans of beer and my bottles of wine and my takeaway meals. But it was something that was necessary and something we did in order to help the kids through their education. And then the end result of all of that was we had got off the UK housing ladder, so house prices here had gone up, our level of savings had gone down significantly, and so there was a massive gap between the money we had and the cost of buying a new home here. So consequently we're renting a house, and obviously we would love to own our own home again, but I am not sure whether that will ever be possible. And so I feel a little bit uncomfortable trying to explain this to people because it seems so strange to not own your own home when you've had a reasonably successful career and when you're our age. But in the end I just give up and don't bother trying to explain it and think, well, we've done what we've done, we've taken some risks, and life isn't all about money, and I'm not going to use financial metrics to value my worth. So here is the mouth of the River Exe flowing out to sea, and there is Exmouth on the other side, and that's a beautiful little town to walk around. Nice big beach, nice old buildings, some rather attractive looking apartments over there. So maybe if I do get my act together one day, perhaps we could live in one of those. That would be nice, wouldn't it? So perhaps the question to ask at the end of all this is, do I have any regrets? And that's a question I often ask myself, and I also ask it to my wife and my children, and all of us thankfully answer positively to that question. And none of us have any regrets about it, and I certainly don't. How can I regret something that led me on a path to where I am today? And similarly for my children, I look at my children and I'm very proud of them. I admire them, I'm inspired by them, and so why would I regret putting them on the path that led them to where they are today? Then one last thing, and that's about continental Europe. So I have grown to really love Germany, France, Spain, Portugal, all of these European countries, and I feel very connected to them as a result of living there and spending lots of time there. And I even have an EU passport, and I'm proud that I'm a German citizen as well as a British citizen, and that gives me a freedom that I used to have but I would no longer have because of the fact that the UK left the European Union. So that connection I have with Europe is very special to me, and it's something that I will treasure for the rest of my life, and I look forward to spending much more time there in the future, either on holidays or extended stays, or who knows, maybe even living there again, because as I've mentioned in previous videos, we moved back to England for 1 year to try it out, and if we don't like it, then we might give another country a try. I have to say, at the moment I'm loving England, so I'm hopeful we will want to stay here, but with the challenges around trying to afford to buy a house here, we may make the decision to go elsewhere. And so that connection I have with the EU is something I'm very, very grateful for. Okay, I'm now going to walk back and try and find somewhere to eat. And yeah, so I'll leave it there. I feel like I've talked far too much again. I hope you've got something out of this, or at least enjoyed the scenery, if nothing else. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you watching the video and commenting, liking and subscribing. All of that is really appreciated. Take care of yourselves wherever you are, and I'll upload another video soon. Okay then, thanks, bye.